This is the Geometry Chapter 1 review. So we start with number 1, and we need to write the name for the figure that we're given. I notice I have F and E are points, but this is a particular type of line because it starts and has an endpoint at F and goes through E. That is going to be a ray. So when we have a ray, we have our beginning point that we start at, and then the arrow is going to be above the other point. So if I look here, I want to start at F and go through E. So I'm going to call that ray FE. Number 2, which of the following is not the name? So I can look at this line here and I can write it with a lowercase script letter, and that's the L. So that one works. I can also use the endpoints AB, or not the points on the line, I should say, not endpoints, but AB and BA, so that works. C does not work though, just saying a B with a bar above it. First of all, anytime we have a line, we need 2 points or 2 letters, and since it's a line, or it should have arrows on it and not just the bar without the arrows. Number 3, name the vertex of angle SRT. Let's say you have a problem on the test with this. You need to draw the angle SRT, because once you do that, you realize the vertex is the middle letter and it's R. Number 4, classify the given angle. Well, we don't have any measurement, but we're safe to say here, if we were to imagine this being a right angle, this is a little bit smaller than a right angle. And any angle smaller than a right angle, or less than 90 degrees, will be an acute angle. Number 5, we have angles 1 and 2. We need to figure out what type they are. First of all, I notice I don't know anything about their measurements, so I can't assume that they're complementary. So that's going to be out. I also don't know if they have the same measure. There's no markings, so they're not congruent angles. So it's pretty much between adjacent angles and vertical. Now, adjacent angles share a vertex, which they do have, and they share a side, which is that ray in between them. So I'm going to go with adjacent. For them to be vertical, they would have been angle 1 and 2 drawn in that fashion. Number 6, which is not true regarding the 2 angles? Well, just looking at them, I see they're both 45 degrees. So that tells me they're both congruent to each other. So I know A works. 45 and 45 add up to 90, so they're complementary. 45 and 45 are both less than 90, so they're acute. What they're not, though, is vertical. So that one is out. They don't share a vertex, which vertical angles would have to do. It's like those 2 angles, and they're not on opposite sides of the vertex when 2 lines are drawn. So C is the best fit. Number 7, all of the following names are for an angle shown except for 1. So let's see. Anytime I have 3 letters to name an angle, the middle letter must be the vertex. F is my vertex. So A and C both pass that test. E, F, M, and M, F, E have F as the middle letter. D, though, doesn't work because F is not the vertex. If we look at B, answer B, we have angle F. We can identify them as just the vertex letter, so there's our F again. But let's be careful with this. We want the name that is not. So D is the one that is not. Now if we wrote FEM, that would actually be an angle that looks like this, which is clearly not the one we have. Okay, which of them are vertical angles on number 8? We have to be careful here because you notice that line between 4 and 5. This does not go through the vertex. If it kept going through, that may change our answer. But since it stops, really these are out, and we're left to look at 1 and 3. 1 and 3 are angles formed by 2 lines intersecting. They're across from the vertex on that opposite side of the vertex from each other. You could also say that they're made up of opposite rays, and that was our definition. Number 9, we have QS bisects our angle. That word bisects tells us a lot about this problem before we start. It tells us that these 2 angles are the same. So I know that angle 1, since it's 6x plus 18, and angle 2, which is 9x, I'm going to be setting those equal to each other because it bisects and gives me 2 congruent angles. When I subtract 6x from both sides, I get 3x equals 18, and x is therefore 6. Now, it doesn't want to know, though, what x is. It wants PQR. PQR is the whole thing. Well, let's see. If I know that angle PQS is 9x, I can do 9 times 6, which gives me 54. So that's one of the angles. And if they're both 54, I can do 54 plus 54, and my answer is 108. Number 10, we have bisects again, another important way to pay attention to. EXF is 34. I need to find EXG. EXG is the whole thing. If it bisects, they're both 34. My total is 68 degrees. Next one, what is another name for angle 2? Well, if I'm naming angle 2, I can ignore that bottom piece. Angle 2, I could name with U as the middle letter because it's the vertex, MUK or KUM. Well, I look at my possible answers. I'm going to go with D, MUK. Now, you may be looking at answer A and say, well, U is the vertex, and we could name it by the vertex. But the problem with that one here, and the problem that happens with that in general, is if I looked at that original diagram and I said angle U, we wouldn't know which one we're talking about, because if there's multiple angles there, we have to name it with the 3 letters. Number 12, we have angle 1 is 5x, angle 2 is 6x plus 10, and ABC, the whole thing, is 120. So, which equation could use to find it? Well, I don't have anything tell me they bisect, so I don't know if 1 and 2 are the same. So I'm going to use angle addition and say 120 equals 5x plus 6x plus 10. And if I look, that is answer D. And again, that one is angle addition. 13, which is the name of 3 collinear points? These are points on the same line. Without looking at the answers, I can see that TPS are all on the same line, and XPY are all on the same line. So those are the sets of possible answers that works. B has SPT, that's the one we want, so those are our 3 collinear points. Those are points on the same line. Number 14, we need the angle that's supplement to TSY. TSY is this angle here. Now when I see supplement, I'm thinking 180 degrees. And I know also that when they're 180 degrees, they form a straight angle. So I'm thinking of what angle can I combine with that TSY to give me a straight line. One of them would be if I went in this direction, and that would be angle LST. And it's a possible for the supplement, but it's not one of the answers. So it would work, just not one we're given. And if I go in the other direction, this angle here, angle PSY, also is a supplement because I have that straight line through here. So let's get rid of that first one, just ignore it altogether. Now I have my straight line, that's the supplement, so I'd say D, angle PSY. Number 15, we're given that RB bisects. There's that word bisects again. That means these 2 angles are the same. So I'm going to say ZRB is 4x plus 16 and LRB is 88. Since they're equal, we can solve. I get 4x equals 72, so x comes out to be 18. Now I got ahead of myself here because it just wants the equation that I could use to solve, so it looks like I wanted to go with A, which was that first one I wrote, and that's because the 2 angles are equal. 16. Which of the following statements is true for the figure using segment addition postulate? So segment addition, with just ignoring the answers, we know that if we take the whole thing, dA, it's equal to the sum of its parts, dB plus BA. And when I look over, that's answer B. Now, answer A and answer C are related to each other. If dB was equal to BA, it would be a midpoint, or B would be a midpoint. If B was a midpoint, then they'd be equal to each other. So if the problem was different, we'd be dealing with those two, and it'd be a midpoint type problem. But in this case, it's segment addition, and we'd go with answer B. For number 17, we're given that B is the midpoint, so I'm going to mark that. And then I have that dB is 5x minus 1, BA is 4x plus 6, and DA is 68. And it wants to know the equations that are true. So I could say 68 equals 5x minus 1 plus 4x plus 6. And that's using segment addition. I could also say, because it's a midpoint, that 5x minus 1 equals 4x plus 6. So, looking at what that means, I know A works, I know B works. Now, we look at C and D. Yeah, we have two answers that work already, but let's think about this. If C, I have this part right here. If I doubled that, wouldn't it give me 68? Because really that dB is half of it. So I could double it, give me the same thing. If I took AB, which is 4x plus 6, and doubled that, it would also give me the total, which is 68. So for this one, actually all four equations work. Now for 18, we need to find the coordinates of the midpoint. Midpoint formula is you take the sum of the x's, divide by 2, the sum of the y's, and divide by 2 from your 2 points. So I have 5 plus negative 9 over 2, and negative 1 plus 13 over 2. This gives me negative 4 over 2 and 12 over 2, which is negative 2, 6. So my answer would be B. For 19, I need to know which formula I'd use for distance formula. Now, distance formula, I look for the difference of the x and y's. The difference of the x's, the difference of the y's. So that means I look right here on answer B, I'm finding the difference of the x's by subtracting one from the other, and I'm finding the difference of the y's by subtracting one from the other. Once I have those, I then add them together, or I square them, add them together, and take the square root. But if you notice all the other answers, they don't have that difference there. So that's going to be what we're looking for. That's our distance formula, answer B. For 20 through 32, it's going to be a true or false statement. And we have to be careful here because we can only use the information they give us. So, looking at the picture here, ABC is a right angle. Now, although it looks like a right angle, we don't know for sure. So we have to say false. And it's not so much that it's false that it's not. It's more the case of we just don't have enough information. For 21, B is between points A and D. That we know. We know if he left point A and went to D, we'd pass B along the way, so that's true. Now 22 is just like 20. We don't know if AB and BD are congruent. In reality, they look like they could be the same, but we don't know for sure. If they're just a little bit off, they don't work. So that one is false, more of a not enough information. 23 works the same way. Not enough information. That's false. ABD are collinear. For number 24, that is true. They are all on the same line. That comes from also, and if you look at 21, they're true because B is between A and D on that line. 25 is false because C is not between A and D. For it to be between, it would have to be on the actual line, and it is not. 26. If a straight angle is bisected, the resulting angles will always be right angles. So if I have a straight angle, I know that's 180 degrees. If I cut that in half, those two angles, no matter what, will be 90 degrees. So that's true. Now, on 27, if a right angle is bisected, the resulting angles will always be acute. This one we can also see pretty easily. I have a right angle, and I bisect it. I know it's 90 no matter what. If I divide it by 2, it's 45. Those are acute angles. So that's true. Now, 28. If an obtuse angle is bisected, the resulting angles will be obtuse angles. This one, I'm going to think of just one example. Let's see if one example is enough. So, let's get rid of this work here. Obtuse angle. if I bisect it, it looks like I have acute angles. I could also say, well, what if 130? That's a good obtuse angle. If I divide that by 2, that's 65. So they'd each be 65. So not only does my picture not look like acute or look like obtuse angles, they look acute. I also found in my example, when if it was 130 degrees, it would be an acute angle. So that we're going to go false. 29, point B is between P and S is true. 30, if two angles are obtuse, then they are congruent. If I had an angle that was 100 and an angle that was 135, those are not congruent. So that's false. If two angles are right angles, then they're congruent. Well, right angles, we know they have to be 90, so they'll both be 90, they'll be equal, and if their measures are equal, therefore they're congruent, so that's true. And last one, if two angles are right angles, then they're adjacent. Well, I could have a right angle drawn here, and I could have another one drawn over here. They do not necessarily share a side, they do not necessarily share a vertex, so that's a false. Now, they could be, but it isn't guaranteed all the time. And now for our last problem, I have that A and B are complementary and A and C are supplementary. If I'm given angle C, I need to find A and B. There's two ways I could go about solving this. So I'm going to make it first two diagrams. So I have A and B are complementary. I know they add up to 90. So here's A, here's B. I also know that A and C are supplementary. So I got A, C. So if I take that thought process, I know C is 140, then I know A, since it's supplementary, will be 40, which comes up here, and it's now 40, which means B would have to be 50. So angle A is 40, because it's the supplement of C, 140 from 180. And then I move that to the other diagram, and if A was 40, I subtract 40 from 90, and I get B is 50. The other way I could draw this one is if I draw my lines here. Let's go with A, B, and then draw it so that A and C are supplementary. Forms that line. And then this is 140. I have 140 there. A and C are supplementary, so this is also 40. Then A and B are complementary. That makes that 50, and we get the same answer.